Hello. Okay, why is it not showing? Oh, this is going to be awesome.
It says we're live.
Hello, everybody. We are live, except I. Nope. Okay, we are live. Welcome to the 50th live episode of Discover the Horror. Sometime back in 2021, we decided to get into the podcast game. And while Damien, Aaron, and myself have already spent decades discovering the horror film genre on our own, we decided to combine our years of experience and knowledge that we might be able to put the spotlight on certain films, subgenres, or aspects of the genre that others might not know about, or maybe not be as familiar with the subject, giving them a little chance to dig deeper. The whole point was to show how amazing and huge the horror genre is, as well as being something that all three of us have dedicated a good chunk of our lives embracing and even wallowing in the mud at times, but always came out a better horror fan. So far in the podcast, we've covered directors like Lucio Fulci, David Cronenberg, Bird-Eye Gordon, William Castle, as well as tackling Turkey, Zero Vampire, Zombies, and many aspects of the convention scene, fanzines, magazines, and even the devil himself. But tonight, for our 50th episode, we decided to test out the waters and do a live show where our listeners can be involved by asking questions, making comments, or even giving suggestions for possible future episodes. Welcome to Discover the Horror, where our goal is to give you the reasons to explore horror that you've never seen and give you new ways to see the horror you've loved for years. I'm Jon Kitley. I'm a staff writer for Horror Hound magazine, and I run Kitley's Crypt.
I'm Damien Glonek, co-creator of Living Dead Dolls.
I'm Aaron AuBuchon. I teach film production and film studies at a university and write about horror just about any place I can.
Now, those of you watching live, there should be a place on the right side of your screen where you can see the chat room. You can put in your thoughts, comments, and questions. So feel free to type away and we will go through them as they come in.
I see there's already comments. I just want to mention that this is not the Republican debate. We are not having the Republican debate tonight.
No, thanks, Art. And we are not talking about maritime dramas. So you can leave that out right away, unless you want to talk about Last Voyage of the Demeter. We have actually quite a few in there, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, this is episode 50. Honestly, I can't even believe that we've done 50 episodes so far, and I'm pretty happy the fact that we've made it not only this far, but that we seem to get a lot of positive feedback from people, especially at conventions, and that just tickles the hell out of me.
Scott Bradley can't find the chat window.
Yeah,
he's
chatting.
He's chatting, so he's obviously finding it. So let's actually go through these. There's our buddy Art. So no, this is not the debate. Ryan, good evening. Good evening to you. Andreas, hello. Hello to you guys. Okay, enough for the Republicans. Some of us are dying out here. Okay. Mud wallowers. Thanks, Scott. We have Andreas says, I haven't heard of the majority of the movies you mentioned of the podcast. I'm watching Deep Red currently. Thank you for new recommendations.
And that's the whole point.
Exactly. That is a very big win. We hope that you enjoy the hell out of that movie. I wish I could watch it for the first time myself.
And if you don't enjoy the hell out of it, I would not mention it at a convention because I'm afraid that you will get piled on.
Yes, especially Cinema Wasteland.
But it has happened.
Yes, it has happened. And we all leer at those people. No, hope you enjoyed it. It's really, really good. Don't take the comments. Okay, Scott, thanks. Hannah is one of my fans. She was just at Horror Hound to our last weekend. So hi, thanks for joining in. Oh, Scott. Jeff, hey guys. Hey Jeff, how you doing? Thank you for showing up. And James, when are you going to start doing 2 episodes a week? When you pay us a lot of money?
Yeah. As soon as we can quit our day jobs, we love to do it.
I think so. When we first started, wasn't the idea that we were going to do 6 movies on one topic or something like that, and we were going to split it up into 3 movies we loved and then 3 movies that we thought needed more attention. So we'd have to ultimately watch 6 movies a week per episode or something. And
that was how we did the first 2 episodes.
Nobody had time to watch 6 movies a week just for the podcast, on top of wanting to watch other movies and the other stuff you had to do.
Yeah, I don't know whose stupid idea that was, but that was railroaded quite quickly. That no, that's way too much time.
Yeah, I think we did it.
That's how we did it. The black and white episode.
Yeah,
was two-parter.
Black and white episode. Yeah, and then we quickly realized that this was just not feasible.
Okay. Just want to say hi, guys. Still wondering why John gets grumpy about VHS collectors. Well, first of all, it's John Jon, not John. That's fine. Just kidding. Man, do we really want to get into this? I get grumpy about VHS collectors because they don't watch the movies. They collect them because they're shiny covers and fancy artwork, like slip covers. See if I can irritate more people tonight.
Oh, we just lost 3 viewers.
But no, hey, we all collect stuff. So if you're collecting them, great. I just hope that you're watching the movies and being able to enjoy them. George Robertson, one thing for certain, the only ones of these guys had to comb their hair before going live. I did comb my beard. So
and done.
The combing days are behind some of us and soon to be behind more of us.
Andreas, been listening to the podcast at work for the past few days. Great commentary. Thank you. We really do appreciate that.
So I don't think we've ever told the origin story of the podcast on the podcast.
As far as how we decided to get started?
Yeah. I don't know if everybody knows that I wasn't originally part of the trio, for example, or how you guys kind of came up with it and how I came into it. So unless somebody has a question, that seems like a place we could
I think
talk
you were about the 5th choice, maybe? No.
That's not right. That's usually the case.
No, but it started with me and Damien chatting about it, and at first I was like, there was no way in hell I'm going to do this because I don't have any time. But the more we talked about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Damien, but we thought it would be a good idea to be able to talk about these movies that we know that, because me and Damien do a lot of conventions and we see a lot of the same modern horror shirts, I guess you could say. And we felt that maybe there's a need to talk about films that we love that don't get the attention that we think it should. And we thought that maybe coming up with an idea for a podcast where we talk about these movies, maybe in a little bit more depth, that new audiences might check them out because of that. And I think it's working.
And it was something we were already doing ourselves at conventions. I mean, well, at the conventions, especially Wasteland and stuff, like after dinner, you would congregate in the bar area and gather some chairs together and then just start talking about, okay, so what have you seen? What have you seen? What have you seen that's new? What have you seen that's good? And then you'd literally have your phone out making a list, like someone mentioned a movie you haven't heard of. Oh, you got to see this movie. It's really good. And everyone's just making notes, writing it down. I mean, there was even like, I think Jen has some pictures where we're literally like out of the bar in the lobby with a circle of chairs just around talking. And Jen used to always make fun of us and call us like the book club because we'd be huddled away from everyone else. Everyone's head down, just like talking movies and stuff like that.
And
so
Greg,
it was something we were already doing. It kind of made sense to roll it into a podcast.
Greg would call it the Kitley Cabal.
And who's Greg for the people who don't know?
Greg from Licks, Jill and Greg. If you've been at a convention, you know their stuff, you know them. And plus, the other thing that we would do at the convention, the after hours, is we'd go through different directors, and everybody would say what their favorite film is, and then the best part of that is that everybody's going to have maybe a different favorite. So if someone picks something that you're like, you're really confused at how that could be your favorite, when you hear their explanation, you may not agree with it, but at least you hear why or what about that particular film attracted them more than the other ones. And I think that's a good idea. Let's see some more comments. Yes, I am an old man yelling at the clouds. That is correct, Michael. Andres, how do you like Hereditary? One of my favorites. I like the film. It's not one that I can watch a lot because it's not a happy film. What about you guys?
I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot more than Midsommar.
Yeah.
I
That's
honestly
it.
believe that Hereditary is going to be looked back on as being sort of a film that I think is as important as maybe almost like The Exorcist. I think it's one of those, the A24 stuff and what they what they kind of refer to as what's the term that they use for the A24?
I forget now.
Elevated. So I think that Hereditary is the prime example of what they're referring to as elevated horror. And so I think people are going to look back on it as a watershed. I don't know where that's going to go, but for the last several years, that's been a pretty major topic in horror. So I teach a horror class at the university I teach at, and Hereditary was a required film the first time I taught it. And then I kind of realized my thing is kind of like this show. I want to introduce my students to stuff that they've never seen before, and pretty much all of them had seen Hereditary. So I was like, well, let's try to watch something that they haven't seen. But I think it's a super important movie, and I love it. But like John said, it's not a movie that it's not like I'm feeling footloose and fancy free. Let's watch Hereditary.
I think a lot of A24 stuff too is hit or miss. It's not like everything they're putting out is great.
Plus, it does have an amazing soundtrack. I will give it that. I listened to the soundtrack more times than I watched the movie. Let's see. Ravenlord, which Ryan can't easily count how many discs I went and bought the next day after a show, after hearing about them the night before. It would be nice if we got a cut of that, but at least it's working, so that's good.
That's one of the advantages of shows, right? Like one of the cool things about conventions and having those conversations is that you can feed the beast pretty quickly. It's like you're sitting around talking about it, and then you just go to the table where it's being sold as a deluxe Blu-ray, and you pick it up.
Although I will say that doesn't work good all the time, because at one of the last shows, a friend of mine, I told him he had to buy a copy of Things, which he did.
No,
he did, and him and his wife told me I was wrong. Actually, his wife was very upset that I told him that he had to buy that. So, but I still stand on my recommendation. Just don't watch it alone.
You did that to me too.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that the person that I spend all my time with is still mad at both of us about it. So, because
I got big shoulders.
Luckily, you gave me a copy of that movie, so I didn't have to buy it.
Surprised I didn't get it thrown back at me.
I know. You've unfortunately made everyone watch that movie for some god-forsaken reason.
I do get a cut of the profits from there. So far, I've made 3 cents. So that's a good job.
You made the budget of the film back.
All right, moving on. We have another one from Michael. For real, though, enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for putting it out. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, for real.
Scott Bradley, you did a show about the great black and white horror. What were the choices that didn't make the cut of the show for more viewing suggestions than those hungry for monochrome horror? Well, I'm pretty sure there's going to be more episodes about black and white horror because there are so damn many that I think we love.
I remember that show kind of being like we were thinking about how to, we were thinking about younger listeners. And I think that when we first started this, we weren't sure of our demographic, but we were like, hey, let's tell these people who may not have seen this stuff about some stuff that they might not have any idea about. So I wonder if we'll ever have a black and white episode again. Cause like we just recently did the Mexican Gothic episode, and that's all black and white, but we wouldn't have called that a black and white episode exactly. But there's all Mexican Gothic films.
Yeah. I was very debating with myself because I really wanted to include Black Sunday on the black and white episode. That was a tough one to not include, but I thought everyone probably saw Black Sunday, or you should have. Yeah.
Well, here, don't need the podcast for that. Watch Black Sunday.
Yeah. Why is Black Sunday so important? Don't just tell people to watch it. Why is it so important?
Mario Bava's first directorial debut, official directorial debut. It's probably one of the most astonishing black and white films. The mood and atmosphere. You have the great Barbara Steele. It's a great film.
Yeah.
Mr. James says, what are some upcoming episode topics? We have quite a few planned. We are still continuing our way through the Universal horror series, the classic Universal. We plan on doing one on Jose Larez, the Spanish director, H.G. Lewis, Bob Clark. What else do we have? Ghost Stories for Christmas, I think might be an idea. Amicus, yeah.
For all
Norman,
the Friday the 13th movies, just watch out. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah. Can't wait to rewatch those again.
John jumped the gun. He was so excited about that episode that he watched all of them before we even got around to the episode. He loves them that much.
I thought we were doing it sooner than later, so I got started to try to get ahead, bastards. Norman J. Warren's another guy too. So we have plenty of subjects already planned, but feel free to either put it in the chat or send us an email, podcast@discoverthehorror.com if you have any suggestions, and we will take a look at those. Any horror type conventions you guys can recommend in California? Probably Monster Palooza would be the first and foremost.
For sure. That's a great show.
Yeah.
I always wanted to get out to Midsummer Scream. I hear that's pretty fun.
Yeah, because most of us are either on the East Coast or the Midwest, so we don't get out to California too often. But I would imagine there's a lot of shows out there. But I know Monster Palooza is like the mother of shows out there, and it's worth going to. Art says elevated, so
he was helping.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I found the word before we saw it, but that would have been, if I had noticed that would have been helpful.
Oh.
When I was grasping for words as I do.
Thanks, Art. From Hannah, I made a checklist of Paul Naschy films, like this one, to watch on my iPad notes. As I said in the past, this weekend, I'm going to attempt to go through the films of Universal Monsters and Hammer ones.
That's a lot of stuff.
That's a long journey, but that is a fun one. So have fun with those. I couldn't recommend doing that enough for everybody. Michael says Ari Aster rubs me the wrong way in interviews. I don't think I've seen an interview with him yet.
I think I've seen one, but not much. Yeah, I've never, for whatever reason, I don't know why, because usually the filmmakers are the first people I'm interested in, but there's nothing about Hereditary or Midsummer that have made me want to do too much research into him personally. And I don't know why that is. That's really strange for me, but I am so fond of the mythology of Hereditary that I'm surprised. I think I've read one long interview with him, but I don't think I watched one. So.
Okay. James, have you seen Talk to Me yet? I have not. In fact, I went to the Last Voyage of the Demeter last week, which is probably the first time in a regular theater I've been in, probably 2 years, maybe before the pandemic. So, but I do plan on seeing it. Art A24 is a distributor, so they're mainly not financing these things. They pick up some great films as well as some lesser titles.
True.
Scott Bradley says, love Talk to Me. Back to James. Alan, our buddy Alan, who was in our poster episode.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your favorite celebrity that you met at a convention? Well, this last show, I got to meet Michael Ironside, which was... Okay, is there feedback or is that me?
It's you.
I hear it too. There's definitely feedback.
I don't hear it.
Well, where is that coming from?
I don't know, but it'll probably go away.
Anyway, for me, favorite celebrity, I just recently met Michael Ironside that I'm a huge fan of, so that was awesome.
Gosh, I mean, outside of Fairuza Balk, I don't know. I'm not sure. Favorite celebrity. David Friedman and Russ Meyer. I thought they were really fun to meet. That was cool. John Waters. He was nice.
I would say for me, it was probably helping to get to bring Carolyn Brandt to Cinema Wasteland. That was also the first time I ever actually met her in person. So that was my favorite. And besides that, Tura Satana.
Yeah,
Tura Satana was super nice.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Yeah, Tura Satana was really nice.
Yeah, she was super cool. In fact, for years, I met her in 2008, I think. And I stood and talked to her. For whatever reason, nobody came up for like 20 minutes or a half an hour. And so we talked for that long. And she had little copies of her business card there. And I remember they were green, which seems so incongruous to me that Tura Satana, who I just so identify with the color black, had a green business card. But she pushed one over to me and she was like, "You should get in touch with me sometime. We should talk more." And I was like, "That's awesome. I will." And then she was like, "Wait a minute." And she took it back and she scratched out the phone number. And then she wrote another number on there. And she's like, "That's my cell phone. Call me anytime." And I was like, literally, even after she died, that thing was still in the visor of my car. I never once called it, but I was like, just the idea that I could call Tura Satana and her cell phone, I would get her cell phone, was like the coolest thing I have ever had in my entire life happen, I feel like.
That is pretty awesome.
So that was super cool.
Scott, Black Sunday, I was waiting for that. It'll happen, Scott. You just wait.
Coffin Joe talking about black and whites.
Yeah, we'll have to do a Coffin Joe episode.
Yeah,
I think that would be in the future, definitely. Although it would be tough. I don't know if we do the trilogy, or maybe delve into some of his other ones. I don't know. Scott, ghost stories for Christmas. I tell them on Christmas. Well, that's a perfect time for them. Kinoscope, which is Ken. I just finished Face of the Screaming Werewolf. What the fuck did I watch?
Was this the film that knocked Rocky Erickson over the edge?
Actually, Ken, what you did watch was the work of one Jerry Warren, who took several Mexican horror films, combined them, added some new footage, and came up with that epic of a picture.
That's what Jerry Warren
get to see. Yeah, Lon Chaney Jr. is a mummy that then turns into a werewolf, which logically makes complete sense.
Why not?
Sounds great. He played both.
Yes.
Why
not? Back to Hannah. Ooh, Bob Clark. I absolutely love both Black Christmas and A Christmas Story. I don't think we'll cover A Christmas Story.
Yes, we will. Here's somebody that I'm very fond of now. These are great movies. Yeah, funny. It's funny because Damien, you talk a lot about how children shouldn't play with dead things is your favorite, but I don't think that I've ever heard you say anything like Bob Clark is your favorite director. So,
yeah, no, he's not my favorite director, but he made my favorite movie. So,
and I feel like the next one after that is my favorite of his. I can't wait to talk about Death Dream. I love Death Dream. So,
yeah, I mean, he's made a lot, right? Death Dream was great. Even stuff like Porky's, The Christmas Story. He's made a lot of great movies for sure. Yeah,
Deranged.
Produced.
Yeah,
I was say he didn't direct Deranged.
Can't add that.
We're doing a Bob Clark episode. Damn it, he produced that. We're doing that.
Count. Might as
This
well
is the perennial argument.
Taking candy from a stranger as a horror film.
Oh God, hear it. All right, Scott Bradley. I'd happy to chat about Bob Clark, an important one to speak about, which I do agree with. I don't think he gets as much credit as he definitely deserves.
Well, and I think that Bob Clark is a good example of what used to happen in Hollywood, right? There was a time whenever people didn't become just genre directors. I mean, it happens all the time where we're doing episodes about older horror films, and it's like, this is one of 4 horror films that this person made. And they made some, romance films and a couple of swashbucklers and a couple of war pictures. And Bob Clark is kind of like, he's known as a horror director by horror fans, but he also did, like we talked about, A Christmas Story and Porky's. I mean, he wasn't exclusively a horror director. So no. I think that it's one of those things that it's kind of hard because there's a lot of other stuff out there. He's not as easy to pigeonhole, but he's still really important director.
Phil Any chance of doing an episode on horror TV shows? If you're talking about series, I'm not sure if that idea has never come up, but we have done 2 episodes on made-for-TV movies. I think we've done 2, right?
2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2. And
Yeah.
those are some of my favorite episodes. I would like to go back and do more because I feel like that's definitely a genre that is, I'm always discovering something I never heard of when we did those episodes. And it's really exciting because it really takes you back to a time and place where these were very relevant ways of seeing horror.
Yeah. And the 70s just killed it with some amazing titles. So we will definitely be delving deeper into those, or the made-for-TV ones, definitely.
And I'd say if folks want us to tackle TV shows, tell us what you're interested in, and if there's enough interest, I think we'd talk about it. I mean, I love horror TV shows too. So
just be, I imagine they would be hard to do because we'd have to watch a lot.
Yeah, the whole.
Yeah, that would take us a little while to do. But I think about those limited series like what's that called? The Korea Hellbound. We just watched that. Kat and I just watched that recently. That was a great series, and I think it's 8 episodes long. Really, really good.
Oh, you also have like the Netflix series Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor, and now the upcoming Fall of House of Usher. So that's technically a series. So we could look into it.
We could do episodes of anthology shows like Creepshow.
Yeah, definitely. James, will you do an episode on SOV horror? No.
Yes.
Next.
Yes. Let's do that. That would be great. I love shot on video horror. These guys don't, but I sure do.
I'm sure we will delve into that. Will be
a fun one.
That'll be a fun one.
Let me just plug real quick. If anybody out there doesn't know it, the Bleeding Skull website and books are such good resources for that stuff. If you like shot on video horror, that is the place to get it. Those guys write. Everybody who writes for them is just hilarious and really knowledgeable, and I love reading their stuff. So
what's the other? Is it Analog Horrors?
Analog Horrors, yeah.
Yeah, that's another massive reference book on shot on video. No, there are some shot on videos that I don't mind. And Aaron just opened up a gateway.
It's called Analog Nightmares, actually.
Nightmares, that's it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hannah, that's how I'm going to spend my Halloween, just with a whole bunch of Universal Hammer and Waldemar Daninsky.
Well, I'm liking Hannah a lot.
That is an awesome Halloween.
Sounds like John's coming over.
Yes, I do have an echo. Thank you, Ryan. Hopefully, although I don't hear it now.
Nickname Joe.
Joe Echo. Oh, corrected it. Jealous of me, Ironside. Thank you. I got to touch him. So wait a minute, that didn't sound right. Best Christmas movies ever. I'm not sure which one. You talking about Christmas Story or Black Christmas?
Black Christmas.
Both.
Yeah. So 2 sides of the same coin.
Oh, and Damien has a fellow fan. Children shouldn't play with dead things.
Best horror movie ever made. Next.
And Art, Damien and I were at a convention. Bob Clark was at. Bob Clark gave his phone number for an ultraviolet interview, but then he died before I could. Oh, that's a major bummer.
No, that sucks.
But
man.
And a phone number I did get for Art at a convention was Camille Keaton. And I made a huge friendship between Art and Camille from that. And I still have the little piece of paper that Camille wrote her phone number down on.
And for folks who don't know who Camille Keaton is, she starred in
I Spit on Your Grave.
On Your Grave, yeah.
Yep. Jeff Owens, have you seen The Innocents from 2021 from Norway? I have seen that, if that's the one with the little kids. Really good, but really disturbing beginning. But I would recommend that.
Is that a remake?
No, it is nothing like. It's about a bunch of kids that have special talents.
Oh,
yeah, I have it on my watch list, but I have not watched it yet.
Yep, Innocents played a local art house. Interesting, scary kid movie that was neat to see in a theater. So thumbs up from Art, which is impressive. Scott also liked The Innocents. Alan, have you picked up the Michael J. Murphy movie box set? Do you recommend? Speaking of shot on video, I do have the box set, and I've watched a couple of his movies, and I would recommend it. They are not amazing films, but I am impressed with what he did with the money he had. So I haven't gotten through all of them yet because there's like, what, 26 films?
Yeah.
in
I
there?
made it through 3 and I was like, God, for Christ's sake, there's like 23 more of these things. But it's impressive because you don't get to see many directors who have that broad of a filmography, who have also really done it as much outside of any kind of system. I mean, that guy made those movies out of his own back pocket. You don't get a chance to see that very often. And they're multi-genre too. There's like love stories, and you got really into some like mythology, kind of sword and sandal-ish sort of thing. So it's kind of a fun multi-genre set too. I've only watched one of those kinds of films in there, a couple of the horror films. And I mean, they don't move fast necessarily, the ones that I watched, but they're pretty competently made. I mean, some of them were made for like $800 or something, 800 pounds,
Yeah.
you know.
And
So
I think that's the beauty of the more, as we've said many, many times before, the more you learn about the behind the scenes and what these people are going through. Not that it makes the films better, but you have a little bit more appreciation for what they're trying to do with, no money. So
and I
it's
would say
worth
also
checking out.
there's a really cool little book in there with a bunch of different essays that so the set, if you don't know the set, the Michael J. Murphy set was put out by Indicator. A great little booklet in there with some really interesting factoids. And Alan and I and John too all write periodically for We Belong Dead, and the editor of the magazine, Daryl Buxton, has a really cool piece in there in the Michael J. Murphy set. So it's worth picking up for that.
Yeah, talking about like behind the scenes stuff to really appreciate a movie more. I think an excellent example of that was on our Turkey Day episode when we watched The Trooper. Knowing a little bit behind that movie made it more enjoyable. I mean, it is what it is on face value, but I understood things better, knowing what went into that.
So about the great Ray Dennis Steckler's The Trooper, aka Blood Shack, which I might be one of the 4 people on the planet who knows a lot about that movie. I feel like that's not a high one on most people's lists.
No, but you also did the commentary for that, the audio commentary, and which if you just watch the film, you listen to the commentary and you go back, it really does make a difference. And although the Hellraiser bed mattress in there is it's something that's hard to forget.
It is. It is. I mean, that guy was committed to filmmaking. I mean, no offense, I'm friends with his daughter, and I doubt that she's listening, but I feel bad that your dad made you bounce on that bed because there was clearly human feces in that mattress.
Oh, okay. Back to the comments. Damien, you changed Art's life forever. So kudos to you.
That's in all caps. Look at that. That's for real.
Happy to change people's lives.
Ken, SOV Films, thought on Tim Ritter, love Killing Spree. I haven't seen any of Ritter's films since the VHS days, and I remember watching Truth or Dare. I think I've seen Killing Spree, but it's probably been 25 years or more. So that might be, maybe that'll be one to revisit during the SOV subject.
None of his movies made me want to revisit them after I've seen them once.
That might be why I don't remember them, but you never know. I've also been in having a hankering to revisit some of Olaf Ittenbach's earlier stuff too. After watching,
I'd be into that. Let's do that.
Yeah,
I like Olaf.
Both Clark's Christmas movies are the best ones ever. I would probably agree. Best box set you've purchased recently and why?
Nasty Habits. Need I say more?
Is that the nun one?
Dirty nun monomaniac.
All right. Well, I would have not picked that one. I don't know. Man, there's so many of these damn ones that are coming out. The Mexican horror one is amazing, but I'd probably say that the Andy Milligan one that Severin put out a couple of years ago, I'm still really enjoying because I hadn't seen a lot of those. They look great, and again, another filmmaker that the more you know about him, you have a little bit more respect for what he turned out.
For folks that know me, they would be unsurprised to learn that my favorite box set that I've got recently, I didn't purchase it because I worked on it, but the Ray Dennis Steckler box set was my favorite. I can't believe that it's the luckiest thing that's happened to me in my professional life that I got to be a part of that thing. I'm just still, last year was just such a sort of floating on air kind of a year because I have loved Ray's work since the 90s. And when I found out it was happening, I was so excited that it was happening, but I was also like, oh my God, can I be a part of this thing somehow? And then I got to be, and it was super exciting.
James asked, do you have a favorite movie that came out this year or excited for a movie that's coming out later this year? Honestly, I've been waiting for The Last Voyage of the Demeter to come out for a year because I remember reading that Javier Botet was going to play Dracula. And he's a Spanish actor that I always call him. He's like the Spanish Doug Jones. He's tall, skinny, and he's always inside of makeup and stuff. But
Right.
Since that's the only movie I've seen this year in the theater, there's probably more coming out. I can't think of any off the top of my head. What about you guys?
I don't think I've seen anything that I loved yet this year, but I still haven't seen everything. And, I'm excited to see everything that's lined up for new releases coming up. The Exorcist sequel, and hell, I'll probably even go see the Nun sequel. And obviously, I'm going to go see the Nun sequel. I mean, come on.
I haven't seen much this year. I'll tell you one thing I was surprised by. I figured either Renfield was going to be atrocious or really, really fun, and I was pleasantly surprised that I thought it was really fun. I like action stuff too, and it was pretty actiony. So that was more enjoyable than I thought maybe it might be.
Maybe Evil Dead Rise. I did enjoy that more than I thought I would. I thought that delivered on exactly what it's supposed to. So
it's no Army of Darkness, but
thank God.
I disagree on Renfield. I thought it was campy as hell, and I did not enjoy it. And Evil Dead Rise, I would have liked to have seen it with the contrast turned up a little bit so you could actually see everything. But other than that, I liked it.
But this is something that I think is worth kind of investigating very quickly because it is something that I think is important to talk about, right? It's like when people listen to film critics, if you don't know what people like, it really doesn't make much difference what they say is good or bad, right? Like I could tell you that Renfield was a great movie and tell you all the reasons why, and John could tell you that Renfield wasn't a great movie and tell you all the reasons why. But unless you know something about our tastes, it's like it's hard to figure out. Like I love campy horror, I really do, and I would say both of these guys love it less than me.
I
I
also
didn't hate
love
Renfield. I
love
Renfield
Nicolas Cage less than that.
But I mean, I think it's really important. It's one of those things that I always try to get across. Like, criticism is only interesting once you have some sense of the critics' likes and dislikes, unless they're really good at explaining what's happening on the screen and why they did or didn't like something. So just my little quick plug.
I think that'll be the end of the year episode. To tune into that and see what it was that I actually did like and dislike for the year.
Alan wants to know what film terrified you the most as a little kid watching the local Shock Theater. We didn't have horror hosts or any program like that I remember and growing up in Michigan, but I know watching Jaws terrified me to this day. Still don't go in the water, so nope.
For me, it was we didn't have one either. Well, Alan and I are in the same city. We live in the same city, St. Louis. By the early 80s, whenever I became a horror fan, we didn't have anything. We had a show called Saturday Night Shockers on KPLR, and I'll never forget the night that I stayed up late and watched Jeff Lieberman squirm. I still can remember how freaked out I was whenever what's his name came up out of the boat with all the worms in his face.
I don't know if I have like just a typical, The Exorcist, The Omen, Shining,
Salem's Lot.
Salem's Lot. Oh yeah, Salem's Lot, man. That scared the crap out of me as a kid. Seeing that on TV for the first time, that was a game changer.
Tell your nun shirt story, Damien.
I don't know if I remember that story, Art. I see you said like the undershirt at Target. So I used to have a shirt that said "I fuck nuns," really big on it. And I would just wear it everywhere. I don't care. I also had a cup that had a sticker that said "I fuck nuns" on it, and that used to be like my convention drinking cup. And I would always have beverages in there at conventions, and I was known for that cup. I think someone, I don't know, I forget what the story is, Art. You'll have to remind me, but I guess I had that shirt on at Target, and I had like a shirt over it, but it like blew open or something. And I was standing in line, and somebody saw what it said. I don't remember the outcome though, but I do remember I have a shirt that says necrophiliac just across it. And I was walking into a deli one day at work to get some lunch. And I'm walking in, minding my own business, and this guy's like looks at my shirt and he's like, "Can't you just leave the dead alone?"
Come on, they don't say no. Alrighty. I think for the record, Damien has swore more times than I have tonight, so that's a record. Hannah wants to know, do we have any favorite TV horror hosts? Svengoolie, Joe Bob, Zachary, Vampira. I didn't have one as a kid, but when I moved to Illinois, we had Son of Svengoolie, who is now Svengoolie. That's who I kind of remember watching.
I love Svengoolie now, and I love watching Joe Bob now, and I did as a younger person. But as a person who's just like fascinated with horror history, I'm super interested in Ghoulardi and Zachary, but especially Ghoulardi, because I feel like Ghoulardi in Cleveland, right, was he was so almost like a force in that town, and it showed how powerful the horror hosts were. That like there's something about Ghoulardi that I feel like, and Zachary as well, and Roland. Roland was Zachary's name before he was Zachary, but just it. I don't think any of those guys, when they started those gigs, really knew how big those things were going to get. And it shows the power that just swept America in the late 50s of the release of those Universal horror films to TV. And then, the fascination with horror that followed that, and the release of Famous Monsters and all those things. But those guys just were the originals, and they got swept up in it. And I'm super interested in that era. So Zachary and Ghoulardi for me.
I'm a latecomer to Joe Bob, but I absolutely love him. I love his show, and I love how he educates and gives so many facts about the movies instead of doing stupid jokes and trying to act like an idiot. And I get, that's what a lot of horror host shtick is, but I just like that Joe Bob gives you factual information, and I find it much more interesting. Growing up in the New York, Philadelphia area, we had Zachary, and we had something it came on after Saturday Night Live out of Philadelphia. It was called Saturday Night Dead, and the host was Stella. She was a man-eater from this town called Manayunk, and they showed a lot of movies. I remember watching a lot of Hammer films on that show. But right now, I love Joe Bob. He does lucky enough to go see some of his live events and stuff like that, and I got to go to his first drive-in jamboree at the Mahoning, and that was pretty awesome.
I would say Joe Bob's commentary on Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter is about the only way you can get through that film. His commentary makes the film pretty interesting, or at least to be able to watch it.
One of my other claims to fame, right? We mentioned that I did the commentary on the Trooper. There was another one on the Trooper. It was done by Joe Bob Briggs. So that's fun to have your name next to a guy like Joe Bob. It's like, yeah, me and Joe Bob, we did the commentaries like we're adjacent to each other somehow.
Alan wants to know favorite horror or exploitation fanzine from back in the day.
We talked about it on the episode.
Yeah, a couple of shows ago. I would still say Liquid Cheese is probably my favorite, but that's not really back in. Well, no, it is 25 years ago. Yeah.
I mean, I read so many of them. Art's here, Ultraviolet. I was a fan of Necronomicon. I was a fan of European trash cinema. Gick and what was Scott's second one called? Trash Fiend. I love those as well. I mean, I just love that stuff. I bought every one of those that I could find. So it'd be hard. And Liquid Cheese, like John said, I love Liquid Cheese. So it'd be hard for me to find one that was a favorite, but I know that it felt like a really special time whenever there was a video store in St. Louis called Whiz Bam in the late 90s, and you could go in and pick any kind of zine up that was about films there. I swear to God, they had everything. And they always had the Something Weird video catalogs and the Ultra Blue archive catalogs in there. And it just felt like a really special moment. It just felt like there was so much of that stuff coming at you. So fanzines were real important to me.
I would definitely be all about Deep Red. That was definitely my favorite.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Jeff says reviews are more about the writers than the movie. Some. I think a good review is not really going into details on the plot, because that's one of the things that I just not despise. I just don't like knowing the whole plot of the movie in a review. If you can give a very generic plot and then point out other highlights without giving the plot away, I think that's the best way.
When I write about movies, I think I try to set it up with, but I try not to get out of the first 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Like and then just sort of in a couple of sentences allude to what else happens. So set it up a little bit for people who haven't seen it. But I agree, it's like talk about the movie. Don't sort of relate what happens in the movie.
Yeah. I remember getting a reference book, and I won't name it, but it literally everything is the plot, and it's about slasher films, but every synopsis is the plot of the movie. So it's a slasher movie. So there's a whodunit. Well, you're telling it whodunit. So why the hell would you watch it? And if you did watch it, you already know it. So what's the point? So anyway, back, get away from the old man bitching. Tina says Chiller Theater showed Equinox, scared me to death. That's actually a really fun movie, but seeing that in your younger years probably could be pretty damn scary.
Right. That's one of the exciting things about watching so many movies when you're younger. They leave such a much stronger impression on you.
Yeah. And it's fun to revisit them years later. And do you watch it with a more of a critical eye, or does it take you back to that time? Jane wants to know favorite non-zombie Romero film, Creepshow. Will you do an episode on Romero? Yeah, if I can do Creepshow. Yeah, I like Creepshow.
That'd be funny,
Martin.
Right? That'd be my third podcast about Creepshow somehow.
Creepshow is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I've seen that in the theater when I worked at the theater and we had that. I watched it over and over and over again. But I know we will probably cover Romero at some point, whether we do a zombie one and then a non-zombie one, who knows? But I know we will probably cover. We have to.
Yeah. What did you say, Damien?
Martin would be my favorite Romero. That's non-zombie.
Yes.
Mine, I don't know. Mine might have to be Night Riders. I just that one grabbed me whenever I was a kid. I think it might be the first one I saw of his. But I love Martin as well, and I love Creepshow. So I'd have a hard time picking. And anytime somebody says Romero to me, I just go right to Day of the Dead anyway. I mean, I'm like, well, that's a zombie movie, but
Jeff agrees on Martin. I would totally. Yeah, Martin's a good one. Scott, Roland was in Philadelphia. He went to NYC and became Zachary. Used to get Zachary stuff. We also had Uncle Ted's Ghoul School. That's a new one. I don't remember hearing about that guy.
There's a really cool story about whenever Roland was in Philadelphia, just to give you a sense of. So Roland is the first in so many ways. I mean, there's Vampira, and then Roland kind of comes along, and with the Shock Theater package, the book that came with it, it's great because it's got these instructions right inside the book that says, so Shock Theater was the package that Screen Gems released to television of all those Universal and other horror films. If anybody doesn't know that, probably all do. But they sent a booklet with it, and it was like, you should have somebody from your TV station, this is 1958, dress up in like a costume and introduce the movies. And so they went to, at the time, John Zachary, who played the character, was at the TV station, and they had a local Western that they did, and he played the Undertaker. So they went to him and they were like, well, you got a black outfit. You want to introduce these crazy ass horror movies? And he was like, sure. And so, but again, they had no idea what the popularity was. And so they invited a bunch of people. They got on the air one time, the show had been on for 6 months or whatever. And they got on the air and they were like, we'd like to invite, all the Roland fans down to the TV station, whatever it was, KRAT or whatever. And we want to, come on in and meet Roland. And they figured that 200 people would show up. 13,000 people showed up. And it took them like 9 hours to get everybody through. And it's just, I think, one of those things where people were like, oh, wait a minute, this is bigger than we thought it was. And that's, obviously he went to a much bigger market when he went to New York.
Eli says dinosaurs. Okay. That might be an episode in the future if that's what your question is, Eli.
You're a bunch of dinosaurs, old man.
Alan says favorite horror soundtrack. Oh, I don't know. Creepshow.
Necromantic.
I hear that's good at weddings. I love soundtracks. I have a lot of soundtracks. I listen to them all the time when I'm doing any working on the computer. Creepshow is definitely in my top. I love that. Speaking of Martin has an incredible soundtrack.
Yeah, that is a great soundtrack.
Yeah, we already did one episode on soundtracks. I'm sure we could revisit that because I could talk on soundtracks for a very long time.
Yeah. Of course,
second Hellraiser movie. It's a favorite of mine.
Yes,
that's a great one. Both the first two Hellraiser movies are great soundtracks.
Yep.
Fabio Frizzi's Zombie, City of Living Dead. They're some of my favorites. They're so, I don't want to say depressing, but downtrodden in their sound.
Yeah. Well, anything from Goblin as well, too.
Yeah, Suspiria. So, that's quintessential, right?
Yep. Eli says Season of the Witch. I'm assuming back to the Romero stuff. I just recently rewatched that within the last month or two and enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than the first time I saw it on VHS under, I think, Jack's Wife was the title.
Under Jack's Wife?
That was one of the video release titles, Jack's Wife.
Oh, I thought you meant like Under Jack's Wife. I was like, that's a different movie. That's the porno cut.
I don't know anybody named Jack, so just throwing that out there.
I just say stay out from under his wife.
Ken mentions Night Riders. Yes. That's I don't know. That's not really a horror film, so I don't know if we could cover it here.
He said James just said favorite non-zombie.
Well, that is true.
There were a few times where Romero was like, I want to break out of my box. I mean, I think everybody's favorite is
they all wanted to break out of their box. How much did Wes Craven complain about horror films that he wanted to do other things?
Well, got to stick with what you're good at.
Like it or not.
Yeah. Scott says Uncle Ted was an inept magician of Wilkes-Barre, PA. Wilkes-Barre, PA, and was on a midnight at WNEP. You do terrible magic tricks. Oh, that'd be awesome. Are all three of you guys going to Wasteland?
I don't know yet. So
nope.
We're getting married the following weekend, so it might be a little tight.
That sounds like a bachelor party to me.
That's what I keep thinking, but I got to see how things go.
I will be at the 45th Halloween anniversary convention in LA instead because my wife loves Halloween. So that's where we're going.
Happy wife, happy life.
Happy Halloween.
All goes together perfectly.
Hannah asks, have any of you watched Count Floyd's Monster Chiller Horror Theater skits from SCTV? I loved SCTV growing up, and Count Floyd was always a treat to watch, especially when they did the 3D effects that weren't in 3D. I think somebody's House of Pancakes or something like that, if I remember correctly. But I love Count Floyd, and Monster Bash has announced him like two or three different times, and he always backs out for whatever reason. So he's a guest that I would be very excited to meet.
Yeah, I have a huge love of sketch comedy in particular. I remember, so Alan mentioned, because of Alan's question, we talked a little bit about Saturday Night Shockers in St. Louis. Before Saturday Night Shockers was the show Bizarre. Anybody remember Bizarre with John Biner?
Yep.
They always showed it was like kind of raunchy sketch comedy, and they always showed boobs for whatever reason. And I remember that was on regular TV. How much things have changed. They had a comedy show where they showed female breasts on regular syndicated TV, and that was on right before Saturday Night Shockers. So I super loved sketch comedy my whole life. And so much like John, like you said, I loved SCTV, even though some of it was over my head. Does anybody remember whenever they did a whole 30-minute episode of SCTV that was called Polynesian Town? And it was just a jokey takeoff on Chinatown. John Candy was like the star of the whole thing. I was like, I had no idea what any of it was trying to reference, but I did love Count Floyd, and I did love the stuff that I could get my hands around. But it makes me think I should go back and revisit SCTV again.
Yeah, some good ones.
Good stuff.
The Schmengi brothers.
The Schmengi. Yash and Stan Schmengi. Cabbage rolls and coffee.
Yeah.
That was the shit that I could understand. Like, Polka's hilarious.
Scott will be attending Wasteland, which I'm sure there will be a lot of us. Ooh, best adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft.
Here we go. Let's go.
Without the gore, I think The Resurrected is pretty damn close. I think it's a little more gory than Lovecraft would have written, but I think it's pretty close to the story.
So I would say that the best adaptation, even though it's kind of a left fielder, is the H.P. Lovecraft Society's short black and white Call of Cthulhu. It's a weirdo little movie that's made in the kind of like the era of the film, of the short story, and I love that. And then besides that, I have had a major turnaround on Stuart Gordon's Dagon. I remember hating that movie. I've tried to watch that movie like 5 or 6 times early on. And I just thought it was not very good, and I wanted to like it. I mean, I've got a Dagon tattoo. I've got a big Cthulhu tattoo. It's green, so it's not going to show up. And it's got Dagon in it, you know. So I really wanted to like that movie, but I just didn't. And it's nowadays it's certainly one of my top 2 favorites of his films. And I've really come around on him. I mean, I always liked Reanimator, and I always liked From Beyond. But nowadays, I just feel like there's not a Stuart Gordon movie that I don't like a little bit. I like all of them at least a little bit. And Dagon has really, really, really become a favorite of mine.
I wouldn't even know. I couldn't even pick like a perfect adaptation of Lovecraft. I mean, it's not a good adaptation, but Reanimator is one of my all-time favorite horror films. But
I would say,
wise, it's not really that great.
I would say, and this is kind of a catch-22, but I think Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness is one of the best Lovecraftian films, even though it's not directly based on a Lovecraft story. I think he really made one of Lovecraft's ideas or concept come to life on film, with the reality being ripped open. I still go back to that one and going, this is the best Lovecraft movie ever made, even though it's not literally taken from his work.
I also think Event Horizon is a movie like that. You know, Event Horizon doesn't have any Lovecraftian. It doesn't even attempt to be Lovecraftian, but it feels like it takes the DNA of a Lovecraft story and takes it to space on some levels to me. And I also think that anything by Junji Ito, including the movie made of Uzumaki, again, not Lovecraft, but still this kind of like something that is really uncanny, out of left field, really bizarre. So there's been a bunch of stuff that I feel like isn't really Lovecraft, but is kind of foundationally.
Real quick, we're almost at the hour mark. I don't know how long we have. If this suddenly ends, it's not to my knowledge. So we're going to keep going for a little bit longer, but just wanted to throw that out there in case it does shut off automatically. You don't think we all died. Hannah goes, Whispers of the Wolf wasn't even a horror film. That skit is great. I'm assuming that was from SCTV. And Scott remembers Polynesian Town. That should be a t-shirt. I remember Polynesian Town. Any animated horror films you guys like? Well, there is some animation in Creepshow. You know what? The airplane episode or segment of Heavy Metal, I think, is one of the scariest and creepiest animated horror segments. That I love that sequence.
There was a recent. Go ahead.
I was always a fan of Mad Monster Party. The Ralph can.
Well, that was stop animated, but
no,
stop motion animated.
Animated.
Yeah,
it is animated, and I would agree that was a childhood favorite. That's still a favorite.
I like the Castlevania miniseries. It was on Netflix a while back. I thought that was pretty good. I'd like to watch more animated stuff in general. I have this open challenge to my students. I'm like, find me an anime I like, because I try to watch anime and I just cannot get into it for some reason. But I'd really like to.
The Groovy Ghoulies.
Oh, love the Groovy Ghoulies.
Yeah,
love those. Anybody have the little PVC figures from back then that want to get rid of them? I'll take them.
Oh, I see. No.
No. James, favorite Stephen King book and movie?
That's
you talking
tough.
about the movie of the book or book?
Oh wait, let me guess. Creep Show.
That wasn't a book. That was a comic book. Movie? Let's see. Creep Show. Favorite book? I would probably have to say Salem's Lot.
Huh. Yeah, it's hard for me, man. I like a lot of Stephen King. Stephen King. So I've read a lot of books in my life, a lot of fiction, and it's all started with Stephen King. It was the first grown-up book I read when I was 11 years old. My mom had a box of horror books in the basement in the like the room where the heater was, and I picked the first one off the top, and it was Pet Sematary. And I don't think I'd be sitting here had I not picked up Pet Sematary that day. I mean, I think that's how I was kind of how I glued myself right into horror. And then, but recently, I find that Needful Things has become maybe my favorite one of his books. And I know it's not horror, but I love The Body and I love Stand By Me as a film. It's just so perfectly nostalgic. I don't know if I have a favorite film of his stuff. Yeah, Maximum Overdrive for sure.
Best runaway truck movie ever.
Pet Sematary. That was a great book, and I thought it was a great adaptation.
Yeah.
Of the movie to the book.
Yes,
I recently heard that the kid got killed. Did you hear that? They run over the kid in that movie, in that book? Is that right?
You just ruined it. I do remember.
I remember the sister Zelda. I remember that just being terrifying in the book.
Yes.
I remember sitting in the theater, watching the movie, and I'm like, I'm like, oh, this part. I'm like, oh shit, I remember this now in the book. I'm like, oh man. And sure enough, to me, it's the Zelda stuff in Pet Sematary is one of the scariest moments in film history for sure. And the guy who played Zelda was at a convention, and I had to meet him. I was like, "You are one of the most terrifying things ever in film, and I have to meet you."
My wife and I had both read the book, so we're in the theater, and when they start showing the kite, we're both just like sinking down in our seats, going, "Oh no, oh no." Let's see. Ryan always found the original 1979 Alien film to be very Lovecraftian.
And that's Ryan from our Freaked Out Black Magic Hong Kong episode.
I would probably. There is some elements that are the unknown I could see in that. Another fan of Ito for you, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's stuff is incredible. If you haven't checked out Junji Ito, there's just nothing like it.
Yeah, he does do great stuff.
Kent says, consider The Crawling Eye a great early HPL adaptation.
That's an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's an amazing movie. Best giant eyeball terror movie ever made. Alan says, Whispers of the Wolf was when SCTV parodied Ingrid Bergman's Hour of the Wolf. Count Floyd showed it and was furious it wasn't a werewolf movie.
That's awesome.
Mad Monster Party is a blast. That, again, is one of my childhood favorites. And I have the soundtrack, which I just
have the poster.
Love. And you have a one sheet for that?
I do.
Son of a bitch. I fell in love with Francesca at a way too young age.
Fell in love with a puppet.
Hey, John Haverstick. He's a former student of ours, and he recently had a. What's that?
He spells his name correctly. Look at that.
He's a young director. He did a Western film. I went to the screening of it. He got himself a theater together and filled a theater up to see his short Western, A Dry Patch.
Kudos.
So anyway, John said,
have you watched Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities yet? Definitely worth the watch. I have watched them and didn't like them as much as I had hoped, but I thought they were decent. They were varied, I would say.
Yeah. It's on my watch list. Haven't gotten around to it yet.
it's on mine too. It's one of those that I was embarrassed that it just came up because I was like, how is it that I've not watched that? As much as I like Del Toro and as prominent as it is, but I think all of us have embarrassing stacks of movies in our houses. So
Yeah.
if anybody asks me why I haven't seen something, I'm like, come into my dining room. Let me show you something.
Exactly right.
Ken said the episode Dragon's Domain in Space 1999 had a heavy H.P. Lovecraft influence. I used to watch that as a kid, but I do not remember that. And Alan says the same thing. Space creatures ate astronauts and spit out their digested corpses. Sold. Time to hook up Space 1999 again.
Right.
Our oldest Damien is a massive Ito fan as well. That's awesome. It's awesome that he's a fan, but it's nice to hear young people reading.
Yeah,
Good
really.
parenting.
Yeah, good parenting.
And John says, thanks for the shout out, Aaron.
There you go. I'm sure that the
Awesome.
film's on YouTube. Go check out John's film, maybe. Oh, no, it's on his website, JohnnyHaverstickProductions.com. There's some more shout out for you, man.
There, that's awesome. The power of media or
Right.
something.
Oh, wait.
Power of crap. Oh, no. Didn't imply that his film is crap. Nope. Sorry. I retract that statement. So, well, we're a little over an hour into the show. The comments have run a little dry. I think we were planning to maybe try to at least get an hour in. I am more than grateful for all the people that have showed up and left comments and asked questions, because since this was my idea, if one person would have showed up, I would have never heard the end of it. So
This is true.
I personally thank each and every one of you guys that have showed up to participate. You are going to make me be able to sleep tonight a lot easier.
Yeah, agreed. This was a first time for us. So thanks for showing up and making it actually fun and useful and hopefully good for people to download in the future.
So let me ask you, how do you guys feel that the show has evolved since we started? I mean, I think we're all much more comfortable in our discussions with each other on what we're doing. We kind of fall into a good flow when we're discussing movies and topics.
I think so. I think it took a few episodes to kind of find our footing, but I think it's, again, I think what our main goal that we set out to do, I think we're accomplishing. We hear from people that have never seen the films that we've mentioned or talked about, that then we hear that they're looking for it or they've sought them out. A perfect example is one of our earlier episodes of TV horrors. We covered A Cold Night's Death.
Yeah,
And
that always comes to my mind.
I had multiple people ask me how they can find it and watch it on either YouTube or something. And like ourselves, were blown away that they had never heard or seen it before. So that tells me that what we're doing is working. And if we can get people to seek these films out, it's worth it. And also to the flip side of that is we've covered films that some of our listeners had seen already, but go back and watch it again with a different attitude because maybe they're looking for something a little deeper that we talked about. And then I think that's a win-win as there as well.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's stuff like when we did the witch episode and it was like Eyes of Fire, which I was not a fan of at all, but I was very curious to hear your guys' perspective of what it was that you did like about it. So I think even like that, it's working.
Yeah, and the conversations that it has engendered, I've just been so pleased with. Both conversations, like you've mentioned, like from people who are seeing things for the first time, but also people who are like, oh wow, there's people who, I forget what the guy's name was, and I feel bad about it, but he came up to you, I think, John, first. Was it at Horror Hound last year, I guess? But I got there a little later, or we got there a little bit later, but I ended up standing in front of your table and talking with that guy about Jess Franco for like a half an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really had a great time, and it was like he heard people who take this stuff seriously, and maybe in his communities, or at least the people he's closest to, it's like, okay, well, Franco, but then heard these people who are like, no, but Franco, really, and and so that's also exciting, and the weirdest thing, and I mentioned on the show yet, the weirdest thing that has yet happened to me because of this show is at Cinema Wasteland. I was at the Vinegar Syndrome table, and I leaned over to ask the nice lady who was at the table a question, and her eyes got real big, and she was like, "Are you Aaron?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "I love your show." And we've become friends with Jenny. I mean, you guys maybe were already, but I've become friends with her a little bit more. And her significant other, Justin, are great. And we talk back and forth. And it's just fun to meet people because of the show too. Or it's like find people that you already know who are like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you guys talked about that." So there's just been so many, this show for me anyway, has paid so many great dividends that I just can't thank everybody who listens to it and interacts with us enough.
Yeah, I would agree, because there's nothing better than loving something, but then when you get to pass that on to somebody else and then it's returned, and it's awesome. So again, back to your original question, Damien, I think what we're doing is working.
I'd say my favorite part of the show is standing with James at Cinema Wasteland and having him tell us 15 times how much he loves the podcast. That's my favorite.
It sounds like I'm listening to the podcast like right now. We love you, James. Seriously.
All three of us are standing there talking, and he just comes up and he's like, "This is amazing." It's like I'm listening to the podcast, but right here for real. There might have been a beer involved or two. I don't remember.
Yeah, a few.
No, there's nothing better than discovering something that you love, and then it's such a great feeling that why wouldn't you want to find more things like that to give you that feeling again?
Yeah, I agree. We'll do one more comment because this is going to be a fun one before we end it. Hannah says, "Y'all need to get Putrid on another episode. He was way too fun to listen to." I would agree. To Aaron and Damien, who took turns editing that 3 or 4 hour monstrosity to get down to a somewhat moderate level, was a lot of work for them. But Putrid is a show all on his own.
And I'll tell you, I have used something that he said as a launching point for an article I wrote for Horror Hound, and an upcoming commentary you're going to hear from me for Severin also uses that story as a launching point. So I'm not mad that we had Putrid on at all.
No. If anything, he is entertaining, because I can vividly remember several times one or all three of us just going, "Wow, what did he? Okay, all right, here we go."
The guy has passion, man. He has passion.
He has passion. He has talent. And again, when we went through this all on a show, but when I first met him, he was some 20-year-old kid. But I was shocked and amazed at the film history he knew of all this stuff on video. I mean, the Olaf Ittenbach, all of that stuff, he knew like the back of his hand. So it blew me away how much he knew.
I think a great insight into Putrid's mind is if you can find a copy of his zine Organ.
Yeah,
it's a thick zine, but the entire thing is handwritten, which is absolutely amazing. And his film reviews he is so excitable in the writing of his film reviews. It's hysterical.
Yeah,
it's definitely, if you can ever find a copy of that, it is worth a read.
I think, to use the gentleman's own nomenclature, he is balls deep in this genre.
Yes. It needs to be on his business card. All right. Hour and 15 minutes. I think we will call it quits. Again, thank you for everybody that participated and tuned in. This will be on YouTube, I think, at some point tomorrow, possibly. And hopefully this will be an audio version of this will be on the Discover the Horror website at some point.
Hey, we don't have to edit this one.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
one just seriously go straight up. We don't have to edit a word of it.
Exactly.
I have to edit out all the uhs and ums and.
And we do have another episode coming in 2 weeks. Our normal show. Don't know if we've decided which one that is, but stay tuned to social media.
Yeah, and folks, please, 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 when we say we want more people to participate, we'd love you to, because we'd love to hear what things you'd love for us to talk about. If you got ideas, we really would love to hear it. And we will make the best effort to get that stuff up and do those episodes you suggest. I mean, this was a suggestion, wasn't it?
The live?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I suggested it.
Oh, it was your suggestion.
We'll listen to your suggestions, Sean.
Unless it failed miserably, then no, I had nothing to do with this.
No, but I think, there's no signs of slowing down or stopping. We have a lot more we want to talk about, and we have a lot more we want to do.
Don't even start.
Under Discover the Horror banner.
And on that note,
at least 2/3 of us do.
Yeah, if we can get John on board.
Stay tuned for more Discover the Horror madness.
Right. Can't wait. So you can find us at discoverthehorror.com, at Discover the Horror. I don't even remember what our Instagram page is. Where's our social media director when we need her?
At Discover the Horror. She's in here. At Discover the Horror on Instagram, at Discover the Horror on Facebook. And also, don't forget, we're still doing it. We still have the promotion with Paul Bearer Press. So if you go over to Paul Bearer Press and you fill up your cart with the best T-shirts, in my opinion, my favorite T-shirts, I should say. I shouldn't say best, but my favorite T-shirts in all of horror right now, you type in DTH10 and you take 10% off of your total order. That's Discover the Horror 10. Boy, I sound like an advertising person, don't I? I just rattled that off right off the top of my head.
And we also still have Discover the Horror T-shirts that you can order through the website. And if you'd like someone else to model them, please let us know, and we will find somebody else and get my ugly mug off of there. Or real quick, if you've bought a T-shirt, send us a picture of you with the T-shirt on, and we will post it on our social media to more listeners wanted. So,
and if you want to get a tattoo of John, send us a picture of that too.
Please.
All right. They won't have a lot to worry about hair-wise, but anyway. All right. Thanks again, guys, and we will see you again.
We appreciate you all.
Yep. Thanks all for listening.
Have a good night.